The microphone gave a high-pitched feedback screech that cut through the jazz music, silencing the 300 guests instantly. The crystal champagne flutes stopped clinking. The laughter died. Every eye in the ballroom turned to me, standing alone on the raised dais, my knuckles white as I gripped the stand. But I wasn't looking at the crowd. I was looking at the center of the dance floor, where the spotlight had drifted, exposing the humiliation I had just paid $50,000 to host. Jessica was standing there. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Liam. Her hands, which wore the 3-carat diamond I had placed there 6 months ago, were currently cupping his unshaven face. He was weeping, a performance of jagged breaths and trembling shoulders, and she was whispering something into his ear that looked sickeningly like a promise. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. My mother looked ready to faint. Her father looked ready to kill. But I didn't feel faint, and I didn't feel violent. I felt a cold, surgical precision snap into place behind my eyes. I tapped the microphone twice. Thump, thump. The sound echoed like gunshots in the quiet hall. Jessica flinched and finally looked up at me, her eyes wide, tear-streaked, and filled with a sudden, dawning horror. She took a step toward me, but she didn't let go of his hand. That was the seal. That was the verdict. I cleared my throat, the sound booming through the speakers, and smiled a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I met Jessica 3 years ago when she was managing a boutique art gallery downtown. I was in the middle of closing a merger that would eventually secure my position as the youngest partner at my firm, and I wanted a piece of art to celebrate. She was vibrant, chaotic in a way that seemed charming at the time, and fiercely passionate. I was the stability she lacked. She was the color I needed. Or so the script went. The first year was perfect. We moved into my penthouse in the city. I paid off her student loans because I didn't want debt hanging over our future. I leased her a car when hers broke down. I did these things not to buy her, but because I was building a foundation. I treat relationships like investments. You put in the capital, you nurture the asset, and you expect growth. I didn't know I was pouring concrete into a sinkhole. The cracks started appearing 18 months in. They started with a name. Liam. He was her first love, a concept I found juvenile for people in their late 20s, but I bit my tongue. He was a musician, which in his case meant he played acoustic guitar at dive bars and worked part-time at a coffee shop to fund his recreational drug habits. Jessica called him a tortured soul. I called him a liability. The first time he infringed on our life, it was subtle. We were at a Michelin star restaurant for my birthday. The tasting menu had been reserved months in advance. Halfway through the second course, her phone lit up on the table. She flipped it over, but I saw the name. She spent the rest of the meal distracted, checking her watch, tapping her foot. When the dessert arrived, she finally cracked. "I'm so sorry, Noah," she said, her voice trembling. He's in a bad place. He's threatening to hurt himself. I have to go." I looked at her, fork hovering over the cake. "It's my birthday, Jessica. Call the police if he's a danger to himself." She looked at me like I was a monster. "He doesn't have anyone else," she snapped, grabbing her purse. "You wouldn't understand. You've never had to struggle like him." She left me there with a $300 bill and a melting candle. I finished my drink, paid the check, and went home alone. I slept in the guest room that night. When she came back at 4:00 a.m., smelling like clove cigarettes and cheap whiskey, I didn't ask where she had been. I wanted to see if she would offer an explanation. She didn't. She just crawled into the master bed and passed out. The next morning, She acted as if she had performed a heroic deed. I was the cold corporate machine. She was the empathetic savior. That was the narrative she began to spin. The disrespect escalated from emotional to financial. 3 months later, I noticed a discrepancy in the joint account I had set up for household expenses. $2,000 were missing. When I pulled the transaction history, it was a cash withdrawal. I confronted her in the kitchen while she was making coffee. "I needed to help a friend," she said, not looking at me. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Liam got evicted," she muttered, aggressively stirring her oat milk. "He needed a deposit for a new place. He'll pay us back." I placed the bank statement on the counter. "You gave my money to your ex-boyfriend for rent?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "It's our money, Noah," she shouted, spinning around. "God, why do you have to be so controlling? He was going to be homeless. Where is your humanity?" She weaponized my success against me. Because I had money, I wasn't allowed to care about it. Because Liam had nothing. He was entitled to everything. I told her to get it back. She refused. I told her if she ever used my money for him again, I would close the account. She cried for 3 hours, accusing me of financial abuse, twisting the reality until I was the villain for not wanting to fund another man's lifestyle. I didn't apologize, but I didn't leave either. I thought this was a phase. I thought if I showed her enough stability, she would eventually tire of the chaos. I was wrong. I was patient, logical, and stoic. I absorbed the disrespect because I thought I could outlast it. The dynamic shifted from financial leeching to physical intrusion. I came home early from a business trip on a Tuesday to find Liam sitting on my Italian leather sofa, his boots on the coffee table, eating a sandwich made from my groceries. Jessica was in the shower. He looked up at me, chewing slowly, not even bothering to remove his feet. "Hey man," he grunted. "Jess said you wouldn't be back until Thursday." I didn't say a word. I walked over, kicked his feet off the table, and pointed to the door. "Get out," I said. He laughed, a smug, irritating sound. "Relax, bro. I'm just crashing for a few hours. My AC is busted." "I am not your bro," I said, stepping into his personal space. "I am 6'2" and box 3 times a week." Liam was frail and wasted. He saw the look in my eyes and scrambled up. Jessica walked out in a towel just as he was heading to the door. "What are you doing?" she shrieked. "I'm kicking the intruder out of my house," I said. "He's a guest," she yelled. "He's your ex," I corrected. "And he's disrespecting me in my own home." Liam slipped out the door while she screamed at me. She spent the next 2 days sleeping on the couch in protest. I didn't beg her to come back to bed. I went to work, I came home, I went to the gym. I stopped engaging in the arguments. I was watching her, waiting to see if she would wake up. Then came the false hope. It was around our 2-year anniversary. I had reached my limit. I sat her down and laid it out. "I can't do this anymore," I told her calmly. "You are in a relationship with me, but you are emotionally married to him. I'm done. Pack your bags." The color drained from her face. I had never threatened to leave before. I was the rock. Rocks don't move. The reality of losing the penthouse, the lifestyle, and me hit her hard. She broke down, she wept, she begged, she threw herself at my feet. "I'll block him," she promised. "I know I've been awful. I'm sorry. I just felt responsible for him. But I see now that it's hurting us. You're the one I want. You're my future." She deleted his number in front of me. She blocked him on all social media. She spent the next 6 months being the woman I had fallen in love with. She was attentive, loving, and present. The ghost of Liam seemed to vanish. We traveled to Italy. We renovated the kitchen. We talked about the future. It felt real. I let my guard down. I proposed in wine country under a trellis of vines with a ring that cost more than Liam would earn in a lifetime. She said yes with tears in her eyes. "I love you," she whispered. "I choose you." I believed her. We started planning the engagement party. It was to be the event of the season. Jessica wanted it at the Grand Hotel downtown. She invited everyone, her family, my colleagues, our mutual friends. I paid for the open bar, the band, the catering, the floral arrangements that cost $5,000 alone. It was a celebration of us, of our victory over the rough patch. 2 weeks before the party, I noticed the signs returning. She became guarding with her phone again. She started taking long walks in the evening, but I pushed the suspicion down. She had promised. We were engaged. I refused to be the paranoid partner. The day of the party arrived. I looked in the mirror, adjusting my tuxedo, feeling a sense of accomplishment. I had weathered the storm. I had won. We arrived at the hotel, and she looked breathtaking in a silver gown. We greeted guests, accepted congratulations, and held hands. For the first hour, it was perfect. Then I saw him. Liam walked into the ballroom. He wasn't on the list. He was wearing a wrinkled suit that looked like he bought it at a thrift store an hour ago. He looked like a stain on a pristine white sheet. I felt my jaw tighten. I signaled for security, but Jessica saw him first. She froze. Her hand went limp in mine. "He's here," she whispered. "Did you invite him?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "No," she said, but she didn't look angry. She looked worried. Worried for him. "I have to make him leave," she said. "Security will handle it," I told her, gripping her elbow. "No, don't embarrass him," she hissed, pulling away. "He's fragile. Noah, let me talk to him." Before I could stop her, she walked away from me, across the dance floor, toward the man who had tried to sabotage our relationship for years. I stood there, watching. I expected her to tell him to leave. I expected a 30-second conversation and a swift exit. Instead, she took his hands. They stood near the entrance, heads bowed together. He started crying. Of course he did. It was his only move. And then, in front of my boss, my mother, and 300 witnesses, she hugged him. She held him like he was a returning war hero, stroking his hair. The room noticed. The whispers started. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press, but my face remained stone. I checked my watch. 5 minutes. She had been holding him for 5 minutes. I walked over to the band leader and took the wireless microphone. I tapped it against my palm. The sound drew attention, but Jessica didn't hear it. She was too busy wiping tears from Liam's face. I walked up the stairs to the stage. I signaled for the music to cut. The silence that followed was heavy and brutal. That was when the feedback screeched, and she finally looked at me. "Jessica," I said, my voice amplified, booming off the vaulted ceiling. "Could you bring your friend to the center of the floor, please?" She looked confused, terrified. Liam looked like a deer in headlights, but he clung to her hand. She hesitated, then slowly walked him toward the middle of the room, thinking perhaps I was going to be the bigger man, thinking I was going to welcome him. The delusion was incredible. "Everyone," I said, addressing the crowd but locking eyes with her. "I know we are all here to celebrate an engagement, a union of two people who have chosen each other above all else." I paused. Jessica offered a weak, hopeful smile. She thought I was saving her. She thought I was capitulating. "However," I continued, my voice dropping an octave, becoming ice cold. It has become abundantly clear tonight that the person Jessica has chosen is not me. Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's smile vanished. "Noah, stop," she mouthed, but she didn't let go of Liam. "Tonight was supposed to be about the future," I said, "but it seems we are still stuck in Jessica's past. I have spent 3 years competing with a ghost, funding a rescue mission for a man who refuses to be saved. I have paid for the apartment, the debts, and this party. But there is one thing I cannot buy, and that is loyalty." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the receipt for the engagement ring. "Jessica," I said, "you're holding the hand of the man you really want. And that's fine, I accept that. But you're wearing my ring while you do it." I pointed at her hand. "Take it off." "Noah, please, not here," she cried out, her voice shrill in the silent room. "You're making a scene." "You made the scene when you left my side to comfort your ex-boyfriend at our engagement party," I shot back, my voice thundering. "Take it off!" She was trembling now. Liam tried to step behind her, the coward. She struggled with the ring, her hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. She finally wrenched it off. "Bring it here," I commanded. She froze. I can't move," she sobbed. "Then I'll come to you." I stepped off the stage. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I walked up to them. Up close, Liam smelled like stale beer and sweat. Jessica smelled like the expensive perfume I had bought her. I held out my hand. She dropped the ring into my palm. It felt heavy, cold, and final. "Thank you," I said. I looked at Liam. "She's your problem now. You can't pay for her, you can't support her, and you certainly can't give her the life she's used to. But you have her. Good luck." I turned back to the crowd. "The bar is paid for until midnight. Please, drink. Enjoy the food. I won't be joining you." I turned and walked toward the exit. "Noah!" she screamed. Behind me. "Noah, wait! It's not what you think!" I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. I walked out of the ballroom, through the lobby, and into the cool night air. I handed the valet my ticket. My hands weren't shaking. I took a deep breath. The air tasted like freedom. I went straight to the penthouse. I didn't smash anything. I didn't drink. I packed. I took my clothes, my watches, my documents, and the hard drives. I called the landlord. I was on a month-to-month lease after the last renewal, a safety measure I had subconsciously taken. I told him I was vacating immediately and to keep the deposit. I called the bank and transferred every cent from the joint account back to my personal savings. I canceled her credit cards. I canceled the lease on her car. By 3 a.m., I was in a hotel suite across town. By 8 a.m., I had a team of movers scheduled to put the furniture in storage. I ceased to exist in her world. I blocked her number, her email, her friends, her family. I told my assistant at work that if Jessica tried to contact me, she was to be escorted out by security. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It was peaceful. I threw myself into my work. I closed the biggest deal of the quarter 2 weeks later. I started training for a marathon. I bought a new apartment, one she had never seen, in a part of the city she didn't go to. The fallout reached me through the grapevine, despite my efforts to ignore it. Mutual friends, the ones who had sided with me, told me the details. It was grim. Jessica had moved in with Liam because she had nowhere else to go. The reality of living in a cramped studio apartment with a man who had no ambition and no income hit her within days. The car was repossessed. The debt collectors started calling her for her own loans that I had stopped paying. The tortured artist routine wasn't romantic when there was no one else paying the electric bill. 3 weeks later, she tried to show up at my office. Security stopped her in the lobby. My assistant called me. She's crying, sir. She says it's an emergency. Is she injured? I asked, signing a contract. No, sir. Then it's not an emergency. Tell her to leave or call the police. I didn't feel a pang of guilt. I felt the satisfaction of a man who had finally cut off a gangrenous limb. The toxicity was gone. My bank account was growing. My sleep was uninterrupted. I realized I hadn't loved her for a long time. I had loved the potential of what she could be, a potential she had no interest in fulfilling. 6 months passed. I was at a charity gala, a black tie event. I was standing with a glass of scotch, talking to a beautiful woman who was a neurosurgeon. She was sharp, funny, and successful. We were laughing about something when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Jessica. She looked older. Her hair was dull. Her dress was one I recognized from 2 years ago, slightly ill-fitting now. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from carrying a dead weight. Liam was nowhere to be seen. "Noah," she said, her voice small. "Jessica," I replied. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I looked at her like one looks at a stranger in a grocery store. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" she asked, glancing nervously at the woman next to me. "I'm busy," I said. "Please," she begged, her eyes filling with tears. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Liam, he's gone. I kicked him out. It was a nightmare. I know I hurt you, but I've changed. I realize now what I lost. I miss you. I miss us." She reached out to touch my arm. I took a step back, out of her reach. The rejection was physical and absolute. "There is no us, Jessica," I said. "There never was. There was me building a life, and you looking for an exit. You found it. But I love you," she whispered. "I chose him because I felt sorry for him. I choose you because I love you. Doesn't that count for anything?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the desperation, the regret, the panic of a woman who realized she had traded a diamond for a handful of gravel. "You didn't choose me," I said, my voice flat. "You're only here because he failed you. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost the safety net." "That's not true," she cried. People were starting to look. "I can fix this. Just give me a chance. We can start over." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Start over? Jessica, I have already started over. I erased you. You are a lesson I learned, nothing more." I turned back to the neurosurgeon, who was watching the exchange with raised eyebrows. "My apologies," I said to her. "Someone from a past life." "Noah, please," Jessica sobbed, grabbing my sleeve. I pulled my arm away with a sharp jerk. I leaned in close to her, so only she could hear. "You publicly humiliated me to protect him," I hissed. "Now you can watch me publicly ignore you to protect myself. Go away before I have you removed." She stood there, frozen, her mouth open, tears streaming down her face, realizing that the door wasn't just closed. It was bricked over. The power had shifted permanently. She was a ghost in my reality now. I turned my back on her and took a sip of my scotch. It had never tasted better.